Stop believing the van life hashtags. For thousands of Americans with full-time jobs, living in a vehicle isn't a symbol of freedom anymore. It is the desperate mass of the middle class that is completely run out of options. You probably thought this was a fringe issue. You thought this was about people who opted out of the system. But what happens when the system opts out of you? We are tracking a financial phenomenon where rent, insurance, taxes, and inflation have formed a perfect storm, crushing those who were once considered financially stable. These aren't people living on the margins of society. They are the people serving your coffee, writing your code, and teaching your children. They clock out at 5 p.m., but instead of driving home, they drive to a Walmart parking lot, lean the seat back, and pray no one knocks on the window. If you want to understand the economic forces reshaping your wallet and stay ahead of the financial curve, do yourself a favor and subscribe to Tax Hack Pro right now. We uncover the hard financial truths the mainstream media glosses over. Hit that notification bell so you don't become a statistic in the very trends we are analyzing. This crisis isn't isolated. It is spreading like a contagion across the country, infiltrating states you once thought were safe havens. From the coasts to the heartland, the math isn't adding up. Here are the 10 states where the middle class is retreating into their vehicles, and state number 4 might just shock you. Number 1, California. California is the patient zero of this economic epidemic. For decades, the Golden State was the engine of the American dream, a place where innovation met opportunity. But in 2025, California has become a case study in what happens when an economy grows, but the infrastructure for human survival does not. Living in a van here didn't start as a bohemian trend. It started as a desperate bid to delay financial collapse. When we analyze the data, the people sleeping in vehicles across Los Angeles, San Diego, and the Bay Area defy the stereotypes of homelessness. These are the working poor and the working middle class. They have gym memberships to shower, storage units for their clothes, and employee badges hanging from their rearview mirrors. The only asset they stripped from their balance sheet was rent. Why? Because in many California zip codes, rent has outpaced wages by a factor of 3 to 1 over the last decade. When you factor in the sunshine tax, the premium paid for gas, groceries, and state income tax, the disposable income of a median earner evaporates before they even pay the landlord. The housing market in California acts like a brutal economic funnel. Complex zoning laws, the weaponization of environmental regulations to stop building, and NIMBYism, not in my backyard, have artificially strangled the housing supply. This scarcity drives prices up, squeezing out anyone who doesn't have significant capital. By 2025, cities are forced into a corner. Do they criminalize the workforce for sleeping in cars, or do they create safe parking programs that essentially institutionalize the problem? The societal cost is massive. We are seeing an erosion of trust between the tax-paying resident and the local government. Small businesses are struggling to retain staff because a barista or a line cook simply cannot afford to live within a commuting distance of the business. California is sending a signal to the rest of the country. You can have the world's 5th largest economy and still fail your citizens on the most basic level. It forces us to ask, is this a failure of personal responsibility, or is it a structural failure of late-stage capitalism where risk is entirely shifted onto the individual? Number 2. New York. If California is the warning of high costs, New York is the warning of high density. What happens when the city that never sleeps literally runs out of places for its workers to lay their heads? In New York, the crisis of vehicle living is less visible than on the West Coast, but it is far more grueling. You see it in the industrial zones of Queens and under the expressways of the Bronx, cars with fogged windows parked in lines, trying to blend into the concrete landscape. New York has always been a ruthless meritocracy. The deal was simple. You hustle, you struggle, and eventually you make it. But post-Minus 2024, that contract has broken. The resurgence of eviction filings after the pandemic protections expired triggered a wave of displacement. We are seeing families who burned through their savings during inflation now facing a rental market that demands 40 times the monthly rent in annual income just to qualify for a lease. If you fall short or if your credit score took a hit during the economic downturn, the door slams shut. Living in a vehicle in New York is a logistical nightmare. It isn't just about finding a parking spot. It's about surviving the winter. It's about navigating alternate side parking rules that act as a predatory tax on the poor. It's about the constant fear of the NYPD knocking on the window. Yet for many, this misery is preferable to the shelter system, which is often viewed as dangerous, chaotic, and incompatible with holding down a steady job. The deeper economic rot here is the missing middle. Luxury towers rise in Manhattan, funded by foreign capital and tax abatements, while affordable housing stock crumbles or converts to market rate. The middle class is being squeezed from both sides, too rich to qualify for housing assistance, but too poor to survive the open market. This creates a ghost demographic of people who exist in the gray zones of the economy, contributing labor to the city by day and disappearing into their sedans by night. If New York cannot house its workforce, it eventually ceases to function as a city. Number 3. Washington State presents one of the most jarring economic contradictions in the United States. This is a state awash in corporate wealth, home to titans like Amazon and Microsoft. It is a state with low income tax and a booming tech sector. Yet the data from 2024 and 2025 paints a grim picture. Roughly 158,000 people experiencing housing instability, with a massive spike in vehicular homelessness in King County. How does a state with so much GDP have so many people living in RVs? It is the classic tech gap. Washington attracted high earners from across the globe to build the future. This influx of six-figure salaries drove up the cost of everything, specifically housing. Landlords adjusted rents to match the tech salaries, leaving teachers, nurses, and service workers behind. The rising tide didn't lift all boats, it capsized the smaller ones. In Washington, living in a vehicle is a grueling endurance test against the elements. The persistent rain and damp cold create mold issues in vehicles, leading to chronic health problems for those living inside. Yet we see miles of RVs parked near industrial parks in Seattle. These aren't vacationers. These are often long-term residents who have been displaced by the very economic boom they helped facilitate. This situation exposes the fragility of an economy that relies solely on high-growth sectors while neglecting the foundation. When the cost of survival outpaces the adaptability of the average worker, the system fractures. Washington serves as a case study that economic growth alone does not guarantee social stability. In fact, without proper housing policy, explosive growth can accelerate poverty for the legacy residents. Number 4. Oregon's situation is quieter, but in some ways more disturbing. While California and Washington have the flash of tech wealth, Oregon's vehicle living crisis speaks to a deeper, slow-motion erosion of the working class. In Portland and the surrounding suburbs, the crisis isn't just about the visibly homeless, it's about the invisible drift. By 2025, Oregon is grappling with a housing market that has completely detached from local wages. The state has stringent urban growth boundaries, policies designed to prevent sprawl and protect nature. While environmentally noble, these policies have restricted the supply of buildable land, driving up the cost of every square foot within the city limits. When you combine restricted supply with inflationary pressures, the result is a rent hike that the average service worker cannot absorb. The psychological toll in Oregon is palpable. We aren't just seeing single individuals. We are seeing families. We are seeing people who park in national forests not to camp, but to survive, effectively becoming refugees in their own state. The damp Pacific Northwest climate turns cars into incubators for illness. Oregon has also been ground zero for the debate on the criminalization of homelessness. As cities sweep encampments, people are forced from tents into vehicles because a vehicle offers the last shred of mobility and asset protection. It is a mobile fortress against a society that is trying to sweep you away. This isn't a lifestyle. It is a tactical retreat from an economy that has become hostile to anyone without significant equity. Number 5, Florida was supposed to be the escape hatch. For decades, Americans moved to the Sunshine State for lower taxes, cheaper housing, and a relaxed lifestyle. It was the ultimate retirement plan. But by 2025, the Florida dream has been battered by a new, brutal reality, the insurance and inflation crisis. Living in Florida is surging, and it's fueled by a unique economic driver, insurance premiums. Following back-to-back disastrous hurricane seasons, home and auto insurance rates in Florida have skyrocketed, often tripling or quadrupling. For a retiree on a fixed income or a family living paycheck to paycheck, a sudden
나를 불러주면 내가 약간
$4,000
좀
increase in
이렇게
annual
소외될
homeowners
때도 있고 어느
insurance is a
해는
bankruptcy.
그치 맞아요 또
We're
계속 내가
seeing a
주류가
new
아니니까
demographic
사무실에서
of vehicle dwellers in Florida, the displaced
올해는 좀
homeowners.
주류가 아닌가.
These are people who didn't lose their jobs, but lost the math equation of their home. Add to this the aggressive increases in HOA fees and property taxes, and Florida has become a financial trap for the lower middle class. The heat is another factor. Living in a car in Miami or Tampa isn't just uncomfortable. It is lethal, yet people do it because the alternative is leaving the state entirely. Florida represents a terrifying shift where external factors, climate change risk and insurance markets, are dictating who gets to have a roof over their head. The paradise is being gated off by affordability, pushing the workforce into the parking lots of the very resorts they staff. Number 6, Texas. Texas has long prided itself on being the antithesis of California: cheap land, loose regulations, and affordable living. Move to Texas was the standard advice for anyone struggling financially, but in 2025, that advice has expired. The Californiization of the Texas economy is complete, and the consequences are rolling into parking lots across Austin, Dallas, and Houston. The massive migration to Texas over the last 5 years consumed the surplus housing inventory. Demand spiked, and so did prices, but the real killer in Texas is property taxes. Because Texas has no state income tax, it relies heavily on property taxes. As home values soared, so did the tax bills. Landlords passed these costs directly to tenants in the form of massive rent hikes. Texas also lacks the social safety nets found in blue states. Public transportation is virtually non-existent in many areas, meaning you must have a car to survive. When you lose your apartment, the car becomes your lifeboat. However, the Texas heat, much like Florida, makes this dangerous. We are seeing workers in the construction and energy sectors, the very people building the state's infrastructure, sleeping in trucks because their wages haven't kept up with the cost of the boom they are building. Texas proves that even in a state with friendly business policies, the middle class can still be priced out of existence if wages stagnate while asset prices inflate. Number 7. Colorado. Colorado offers a stark look at the resort economy, effects spreading to the general population. For years, we knew that ski towns like Aspen or Vail had workers living in vans because billionaires pushed out the millionaires, and millionaires pushed out the workers. But now that dynamic has descended from the mountains and hit the front range cities like Denver and Colorado Springs. By 2025, Colorado is suffering from aggressive gentrification. It has become a magnet for remote workers and outdoor enthusiasts with high disposable incomes. This influx has raised the floor on housing costs to a level that creates a working homeless class. Teachers, firefighters, and service workers are finding themselves in a state of housing insecurity. The geography of Colorado complicates this. Winter survival in a vehicle requires expensive gear and fuel for heat, adding a poverty tax to the situation. Unlike the coastal states, Colorado's vehicle dwellers often try to disperse into the vast public lands, BLM land, to avoid detection, creating a hidden crisis in the forests. This is a state where the lifestyle brand of outdoor freedom is being grimly mimicked by those who are outdoors because they have no other choice. It is a playground for the wealthy and a campground for the worker. Number 8. Hawaii. Hawaii is where the housing crisis becomes a tragedy of heritage. In Hawaii, van living is frequently not a choice of transients, but the forced reality of native Hawaiians and multi-generational locals. This is a state with the highest cost of living in the nation, where the price of a gallon of milk or a kilowatt of electricity is shocking to mainlanders. The rise of short-term rentals, Airbnbs, has devastated the long-term rental market. Landlords can make more money renting to tourists for a week than to a local family for a month. This effectively evicts the local workforce. By 2025, we are seeing entire families living in cars or beachside encampments. These are people with deep ancestral ties to the land who are being economically cleansed from their own home. For the service workers who keep the tourism industry alive, the commute from affordable areas is impossible because of island geography. So they live in their cars near the hotels. It is a dystopian loop, serving paradise by day, sleeping in a parking lot by night. Hawaii serves as the ultimate warning of what happens when housing becomes a global investment asset rather than a local utility. Number 9. Nevada. Nevada, specifically Las Vegas and Reno, was once the pressure valve for the West Coast, the place you went when California became too expensive. But the valve is broken. Nevada's economy is heavily reliant on the service and hospitality industry, sectors that are notoriously volatile. Tips fluctuate, shifts get cut, and recessions hit hard. In 2025, we are seeing a surge in vehicle living among casino and hotel workers. The visual is striking: the glittering lights of the Strip, billions of dollars in revenue, and just a few blocks away, employees sleeping in the back of sweltering sedans. The transient nature of Nevada's population makes it easy for people to fall through the cracks. Social ties are looser here. There is less community safety net to catch you when you fall. Furthermore, corporations have bought up vast swathes of single-family homes in Nevada to turn them into rentals, driving up prices and removing the ladder to homeownership. Nevada shows us the danger of an economy built on low-wage service jobs in an environment of high-asset inflation. It is a gamble where the house wins and the worker loses. Number 10. Arizona. Finally, we look at Arizona. Much like Texas and Nevada, Arizona was a destination for affordability, but the inflation in Phoenix has been among the highest in the nation. The cost of living adjustment has been brutal. In Arizona, the crisis is compounded by the environment. We are seeing a rise in heat-related deaths among the unhoused, including those in vehicles. A car in the Phoenix sun is an oven. Yet, as rents spiked by double-digit percentages year over year, seniors on fixed incomes and low-wage workers had nowhere else to go. The snowbird economy also plays a role here, creating seasonal price spikes that hurt year-round residents. Arizona demonstrates that there is no safe harbor left. The places that were cheap 5 years ago are now the epicenters of the inflation crisis. Across these 10 states, the narrative is consistent and terrifying. The social contract, the idea that if you work 40 hours a week, you can afford a roof over your head, has been breached. This is not about people failing, it is about the math failing. We are seeing the rise of a nomadic proletariat, a mobile workforce that is disconnected from the stability of homeownership and community. This is a structural problem involving zoning, wage stagnation, the financialization of housing, and corporate greed. And if you think you are immune because you don't live in these states, check your own local listings. Check your own property tax bill. The trend is moving outward, not retreating. Van life isn't freedom. It's a warning sign that the middle class is running out of road. If you want to understand the economics behind the headlines and learn how to protect your own financial future in these turbulent times, make sure you like this video and subscribe to Tax Hack Pro. We break down the numbers so you don't become a victim of them. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next V.